Välkommen to Forfällignes belysning. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better mental health using the understandings of the ancient Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Like that.
I didn't realize that we had zero volume. Who knows? Good morning and God Morgan for those of you who are joining us, and I apologize. Still getting used to all the technology. Today we're talking about Thor, and we're talking about Thor from a perspective of recognizing his physical strength in our mental strength. So in much the same way that Thor brings this understanding throughout history of this physicality, very, very powerful, so too are we within the mind. And oftentimes we allow ourselves to be influenced out of that understanding. We, one of the long-standing things is that we set our New Year's resolutions in December, and New Year's come, and then, of course, by the end of January or soon thereafter, our resolutions kind of fall to the wayside. We find excuses, we find reasons to not do this. And I think of all the jokes that I've heard throughout the years about we setting these New Year's resolutions to get fit, to go to the gym, to do this, and a perfect, we pay for our membership and we do all the things, and then by the end of January, we just have so much other life, or we find so much other life that's getting in the way, that we forget all about this resolution to be healthy, to be going to the gym and get physically fit. Myself included. So when we think about Thor and his commitment to our lives, we have to think about it from the perspective of, how can I use the understanding of that physical strength for my mental strength? Making a decision and sticking to it. There are some decisions, obviously, that we will make in our lives, such as behaviors, such as, particularly with disciplining our children. And we discipline them, and then we kind of think about it and go, what's going to be the influence in 5 years, 10 years, right? What is this going to matter? Now, granted, there are some pieces of discipline that are a little different, and we're not going down the discipline and the kind of other thinking. We simply are thinking here about being mentally strong. One of the 9 noble virtues represented by the Norse people, particularly my ancestry, is this idea of perseverance, is just enduring when we think we can't go any further. We're at our end. We just can't do it anymore. We can. And the strength of Thor, obviously the physical, the mental strength conversion, but the mental strength that we can draw a role model from, tells us that the only thing that prevents us from staying true to our path are those influential energies all around us attempting to sway us otherwise. They're all around us. They're all the time. This is the energies used by marketing and advertising companies to sway us, to convince us to buy their products. There are other peoples who are here to convince us that we need to feel and think a certain way. We need to behave a certain way in society. Well, I'm here to say that all of that is influential energy that we need to evaluate on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, whenever influential energy comes in, that says we need to affect someone else's trajectory, right there's a red flag. We don't. We have no responsibility. We don't even have responsibility for our offspring, for our children. we can discipline them. We can keep them out of the streets so that they're not running with cars. We can keep them away from firearms so that they're not making impractical decisions with them. We can do all of these things. We can make sure they do their homework and that they're not absorbing their time into video games or their cell phones, being social. We can establish all these. That's just learning to live in society. Now remember, teenagers, particularly teenagers, upper single digits, all the way through the teenagers and into much of the teens, or the 20s rather, we're still forming. Remember, we talked a while ago about the thought process, and we brought up this idea of a recipe card, and the recipe card had kind of identified chemical compositions that's contained within the biochemistry that would kind of re-inject into the mind. And in that biochemistry, we simply had to understand what the emotion was based on the energy that was contained within that, right? So that was a really critical piece. And so from about mid single digits all the way through teenage years into our mid 20s, we're writing that recipe card. And that recipe card will change. It's written in pencil, FYI, because, as we get older, our definitions of these different emotions will come into discussions, right? Many times, our first recognition of this thing called love is, oh, this is what love is. Well, love isn't always that, or it doesn't present itself that way. Energy within the spectrum of love, it changes, and the people whom are sending it and receiving it are going to send it and receive it differently. As an example, my shield maiden and I, we've been married 35 years. Our definition of love today is not even close to the definition we had 35 years ago. 35 years ago, it was probably more lust than it was love. But the love established, and we built on that. And, we've taken, for those of you who have read my book, and the one soon to come out, you'll know that my shield maiden and I, we separated for a couple of years early in our relationship, and then eventually found our way back to each other and to a life that we've now built together for at least 32, 33 plus years. So many times our definitions will change based on, remember, looking not so far back, when we talked about the well of the self. The well of the self is that place that we're going to change. We're going to manage and maintain our rocks at the bottom of that well. Well, that manipulation of rocks then changes the energy that we're going to convert into biochemistry, which is then sent through the body, and arriving at the brain where it's converted back to bioelectricity that we recognize. And when this energy is converted back to the bioelectricity, here's our recipe card. Oh, okay, I see. I gotcha. All right. So this is how you feel. That energy is put into the stream or the packet at that point. So we have, there's kind of this multifaceted effect of how this works. Now, influential energy is transient here on Midgard. It's transient, and it remember, influential energy is, there's two forms of influential energy. There's one, the natural world, and then there's one that's man-made. The man-made one, or human-made, is who knows what the polarity is going to be. Why? Because polarity is one of those things that are assigned, made, manufactured by the human mind. So it only exists, positive and negative, only exists in Midgard, in the physical realm. Why? Because it has to be made, those two things have to be made by the human mind. Natural influential energies is simply the universe talking to us in much the same way that my ancestors have called me and said, hey, you need to broadcast this message. You need to help people to understand about how they think and be able to help them recognize these things so that they can better manage their thought process and how they're handling influential energies. However, their discussion to me said, hey, you need to do this. That's influential energy. Whenever we try to convince someone else of our idea or our desires, right, we're influencing them. And that influential energy can have very different effects on different people. In much the same way that every other piece of energy is brought into our lives via, usually through the sensory input, it's processed through our emotional states, through our belief systems, through our virtues, our values, and it's stored in our memories of our interpretation because we're different than anyone else. Our DNA is being manipulated as we go, right? Because we're building all this chemistry within our body, and that chemistry, in much the same way that cancer does, we get this idea that if I manipulate one cell, it splits and goes on. This one dies off. But now these two are now infected. They split, so on and so forth. We're then passing this cancerous cell, and we get this cancerous growth. In much the same way, so too is this energy that is manipulating our DNA in a way not as cancerous, but it's manipulating our DNA in the same way. So it's manipulating one cell, that cell splits, and so on and so forth. On and on and on and on. So we have a chemical interaction that's playing with our DNA, changing the bottom of our well, changing those values, those virtues, those values, belief systems at the bottom of our well. That then every sensory input, after it's modified by our mood, after it's modified by our imagination, drops into this well of the self where it's then manipulated a third time, if you will, by these values, by these virtues, values, and belief systems. All right. So all of that then coagulates together and we create the biochemistry of that image. Manipulated 3 times now, right? Because imagination is going to come in and it's going to feed into the sensory input. Sensory input now and the imagination is going to go through the mood filter. Mood filter is then going to manipulate and modify and then drop it into the well of the self. The well of the self is then going to pass through the entirety of the well down to these virtues, values, and belief systems where it's now converted into biochemistry. This is the body's way, the heart's way of releasing hormones into the bloodstream that are then going to filter back up, and we're going to arrive at the horn of feeling. The horn of feeling, of course, is where this biochemistry is now reconverted back into energy. But there's some caveats there, and for those of you who haven't heard the show, I would check it out. In the last couple of weeks, we've talked about the horn of feeling. And that energy is then going to either A, spill over and create, if we've got way too much energy, we can have a mindful effect, which could include, hysteria, could include depression, could include anxiety, could include, anger, blind rage. All of these things are all included when the energy flows over the horn. The surrounding brain doesn't know what to do with it. It simply fires off, right? So That's what happens. That's why we act the way we do. And that's what creates the symptoms that we see when we see people who are kind of, their horn is overfilling and they're having depression, anxiety, anger, or uncontrollable anger. Or, on the other side is the euphoria, is the, orgasm. It's the climax, right? So that's the other side. Now, so as you can see, sometimes that overflowing of energy is worthy, right? So climax, good thing, whee, right? So all these energies and all this management of this energy is all up to us. We can do this, and we can, and we do, right? We do it on. Sometimes we may feel like we're overwhelmed. And we've talked a little bit about this space within the horn of feeling that you and I all have control of, and that's called the cognitive space. Cognitive space allows us to kind of put a damper on this expanding energy, keep it in the horn, manage it, and actually control our emotions so that we're not seeing things like anxiety and depression and panic attacks and those types of things. So super important that we understand that. All right, I got to take a real quick break. When I come back, I want to talk about how we can use the strength of Thor today to manage our mental space and put us in a better place, put us where we want to be, not where the society, not where other people are trying to put us, but where we want to be. We'll be right back after this very quick break.
The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me. It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick break with us. Today we're talking about the strength of Thor. I do want to give a shout out. You'll be seeing some ads coming up to Vinci Art. Vinci Art has decided to affiliate with us, and so we'll be putting up ads for them here soon. So you'll be seeing those on the webpage, certainly, and on the videos. So do want to welcome Vinci Art and tell them that we are honored to provide an affiliation with them. So look forward to that. So today we're talking about Thor and mental strength. Using Thor's physical strength as our role model, we're going to apply mental strength to our everyday processes. So the first thing we have to think about when we're thinking about controlling and using our mental strength is understanding the influences that are coming into our lives every minute of every day. So let's think about this. There are two real most powerful ways that influential energy is going to affect us. One is going to be intrinsic and one's going to be extrinsic, right? All right, so let's talk about the intrinsic first. The intrinsic is when the imagination is drawing from our memories, and it's going to remember, part of its job as imagination, very akin to the processes used for wisdom. Imagination is going to bring imagery forward, and it's going to stuff it into the incoming sensory input. Okay, so imagination is going to manipulate incoming sensory input. This is why in some cases we may think we hear things, we may think we see things, we may think we feel things, smell things, taste things. This is why, because this imagination is bringing a memory forward and it's injecting it into the sensory input that we're pulling in, right? So super, super important to understand that that's its job, okay? Its job, the imagination, in this case, the imagination is designed to set us up for fight or flight, right? So we're kind of preempting ourselves by saying, okay, what's a threat in this image? What's a threat in this picture, right? And what am I going to do about it? Am I prepared to deal with it? Am I prepared to fight it? Or do I need to prepare to flight, right? So this is the mind's way of kind of preparing us. So we're dealing with imaginations, kind of setting the groundwork for fight or flight. So that's our intrinsic value. Now, this can be a very powerful thing. We can imagine quite a bit. And so we simply have to recognize that our imagination is going to play a role in our sensory input. Did we actually see that? Did we actually hear that? Did we actually taste that? What is real versus what's fantasy, right? So we have to evaluate each sensory input. It's not just whatever I saw. Okay, that's not what we need to do. We need to cognizantly be aware of what we're receiving, right? What's real, what's not. Okay, so that's really our mental control. So think about the things that you experience in a day and then kind of review them periodically throughout the day. Take a few minutes, sit down and go, okay, what exactly did I see? And start defining some of those little details about the experience. The more details you have, the more you actually saw the real thing versus just glance over it, which means imagination played a bigger role. All we have to do is get to understand that imagination plays a role, and the more we can be aware of what we're actually intake, the better we're going to set ourselves up for now properly managing that going forward, right? So that's intrinsic. Extrinsically is we have to move our bar of authority. When we are little and we have our parents and our peers and our older siblings, uncles, aunts, all those, they're going to influence our behavior. They're going to influence us in some way. Why? Because they're putting their values in our well. It's just part of who they are. They don't mean to. It's not intentional. It's not something they may be even cognizant of. They simply are the way they are, and we admire that, and so we're going to take those values and put in our well. That way, it's going to help process all of our sensory input in a similar way that they do. It is, right? So, understanding those, recognizing those values, where we got them from, do they still hold value, or are they causing conflicts with other rocks? I mean, is there some internal conflict in these rocks? And ultimately accepting responsibility that we, and we alone, can take rocks out. We can pitch those values. We can grow the values that we want. We can make those rocks bigger. We can have more influence of those rocks. We are in charge of that rock garden, right? So we are ultimately responsible to manage that garden, because that garden is what then translates everything we see, every experience that we have in this physical reality goes through those rocks. What rocks are you allowing? So managing your intrinsic values, taking time, intrinsic reflections, the best way to do this, taking time to recognize what values you have, where you got them from, and what value they hold in your life today. Taking time to recognize who we are at our core, at the very cornerstones of what makes you, you, right? Recognizing that value is a critical part of then reestablishing management over those rocks. So, I wish you the absolute best at recognizing those two pieces, your imagination and your management of the rocks. Remember, you are in charge of here. No one else can charge. So if you're allowing people to kind of dictate and roll that, that's on you. You need to bone up and decide what's best for you. What are the values that you want? All right. I wish you the very best of Thor's Day. We look forward to seeing you again tomorrow morning, where we'll talk about the energy manifestation of Freya, of course, the goddess of love and war, and just include some of her recognitions in our everyday life. So I wish you the very best Thor's Day, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, if you do have any questions, hit up the website, and we'll make sure you get an answer. Love and light, my friends. Happy Thor's Day.
Watching Ulfhednar's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska ulfhednar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.